Donald Trump. I mean, he absolutely, idolises the royals.
President Trump would take it incredibly personally if the visit didn't go ahead, because he does take these things very, very personally.
The King is up at Sandringham. He's only 2 miles away. I'm told he has no plans to go and see his brother.
It would escalate the story, and it would bring it back to the surface again.
And as for Fergie, she can't run forever. No. She's got to come back one day and face the music.
Welcome to Royal Exclusive, where it's been a week of high-profile visits. The King refused to see Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor as his scandal-hit brother was visited by Charles's personal chaplain. There was Wales mania as Catherine and William embarked on 7 walkabouts, while Harry and Meghan's trip to the Middle East wasn't as well received. Plus, will the King need to step in to mend a rift between the UK and the US? I'm Matt Wilkinson, Royal Editor of The Sun, and joining me this week is veteran royal journalist Phil Dampier and former Press Secretary to Queen Elizabeth II, Elsa Anderson, to discuss all of this and more. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Now, we've seen the developments, obviously, in the Middle East the last couple of days, the ongoing war, and we've also seen Donald Trump, President of the United States, eviscerate Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister. And we are expecting, in a couple of weeks' time, in April, the King and Queen to go to a state visit in the US to Washington, DC, to meet the President. Guys, there must be some meetings behind closed doors at the moment within the palace. Slight nervousness about this state visit. Elsa, you've obviously been in the room for some of these meetings. What's going on? Is this state visit going to go ahead?
Well, of course, as you know, the state visit actually hasn't been confirmed by Buckingham Palace yet. So they've still got some wriggle room if they want to get out of it. Every state visit is on advice of government. So I think what they're looking for at the moment is how the relationship between the UK government and President Trump will pan out. How the crisis in the Middle East with the ongoing conflict with Iran will pan out. So I think they've still got time to make actually the last final decision about whether they want this visit to go ahead or not. But of course, it will be hugely high profile if it does.
Well, things are moving so fast. I mean, back in September, which seems like a decade ago now, we had Donald Trump over here for the state visit, Phil, and it was a success. I mean, I'll quote here Trump. He said that he called Charles a very special man. He said the King had epitomised the fortitude, nobility and spirit of the British people, and also raised a remarkable son, William.
Yeah, well, it's a good job that we all know Donald Trump loves the royals. He absolutely adored the late Queen, and it's a good job too, because his relationship with Keir Starmer seems to be over in terms of a good one. And so, yeah, I mean, I think as Elsa says, we don't yet know if it's going to go ahead. I mean, obviously, if the situation in the Gulf deteriorates, it might well be cancelled, but, purely for security reasons. But I think he will definitely want it to happen, Donald Trump. I mean, he absolutely, idolises the royals. People say he never looked so happy as when he's mingling with them, and he loved his 2 state visits over here. And he's a great fan of Charles. I mean, they disagree on a lot of things. For example, climate change. I don't think they see eye to eye on that. But he really admires him, and he really admires William and Kate as well, as we saw when he was over last time. So he will definitely want it to go ahead. And of course, the King has to tread a very fine line between getting involved in politics and using the soft power, if you like. I mean, it was suggested that when Trump was quite disparaging about British troops not being on the front line in Afghanistan, that he sort of through back channels made it known to him that was unfair, and he kind of backed down on that and gave what you might call an apology from Donald Trump, which is not easy to get. But so I think
it was more than a suggestion.
He's got his ear, and he wouldn't listen to anyone else, but to the King he would do, and that's a good sign. So I think we've got to use this leverage, because it's important for the relationship. But whether it's actually going to go ahead or not, only time will tell. It depends how bad it gets.
And I think President Trump would take it incredibly personally if the visit didn't go ahead, because he does take these things very, very personally. Yeah. So it will be a huge affront to him. And then, what happens next, just in terms of the relationship between US and UK?
Phil was talking there about the King's intervention. And this is comments that Trump made about British soldiers being off the front lines, in Afghanistan, etc. And he did, with the front page of The Sun on Sunday, we made it very clear that through messages, Charles had let Trump be known that it caused hurt within the UK, and he did backtrack. Let's be honest, Trump did actually backtrack and listen to what the king had said.
Especially as the king is head of the armed forces as well. It would be so wrong of him not to actually intervene in something like that.
But he's got a huge power, the king, over. What do you think, if this state visit does go ahead, and you're right to point out it hasn't been announced, but it's an open secret, it's all planned, they've been out there, they've done recce's, it's all planned for April. What do you hope that the UK or the king could achieve from such a high-profile state visit?
I think certainly easing the tensions of the relationship that's currently going on at the moment. As I did the last state visit by the late Queen to the States, and it was enormous. It was absolutely enormous. It was sort of spine tingling. I don't know. Were you there, Phil, for that one?
I wasn't for that one, no.
Okay,
No.
but it was extraordinary. And again, it's that sort of power, soft power that the royal family can wield, which politicians simply can't.
What happens, Elsa? So we're a couple of weeks
Lots of sleepless nights, that's for sure.
before the trip, because he's got to write probably an address. He'll have to make a speech at the dinner, and surely you will have to leave that writing of that speech right up to the last moment, because things are happening so fast. But what happens ahead of a state visit? How does the king or the queen, in your case, how do they prepare for this?
Lots of recce's, first of all. So it's with the senior members of the team. So it would be the press secretary, the lead private secretary and the lead protection officer, who will go over in advance and actually formulate what their idea of the state visit will be with the ambassador at the time. Go back, they'll consult with the king or queen, whoever it's going to be. There's normally a separate programme that will be formulated for the queen. So while the king is doing sort of state business, the queen will go off and do something else. But it's a tightrope. And everything from what they wear to what they say to who they meet to even where they stay has to be, really, really down to the last detail. And as you rightly said, things can change at the last minute. So government will draft that iconic speech or address that the king will make if he goes and when he goes. But the king will have a serious input into what he wants to say as well. So again, it's a balancing act.
But this is to mark the 250th anniversary, isn't it, of the independence? So there's going to be lots of, that theme will be running through it, and there'll doubtless be lots of jokes about, how they broke away from the Brits, but now we've got a special relationship, whatever. So there'll be speeches around that theme, won't there?
And every word will be looked at. Every emotion, every gesticulation. I mean, everything they do.
As long as they get the microphone at the right height.
Absolutely.
That famous occasion when the Queen couldn't be seen because the microphone was in front of her. I think it was Bush, wasn't it? The first Bush.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that recce went wrong then, obviously. Not in your era,
It wasn't me.
Yeah. Do you think the king wants to go? I mean, this is a serious question because...
Well, I did read somewhere recently that he's not looking forward to it. But
he's got a lot on his plate at the moment, Phil.
Well, he's got a lot on his plate. Obviously, he's still battling his illness, and he's obviously got the Prince Andrew problem, so he's obviously got a lot on his plate. But I think it's like anything else. When you get there, you enjoy it, don't you? Sometimes you don't want to go on something, or you think, do I really want to do this? But I'm sure that he might have mixed feelings, but I'm sure that when he gets there, he will enjoy it, especially as I'm sure they'll get a very warm welcome.
I think you're right. It is the kind of welcome that you get that actually buoys you up and gives you the incentive to carry on. And I think if there are protests when he's there, either about the war with Iran or Jeffrey Epstein, that will actually, dampen his mood. And he's very much, he's sort of a glass half empty person rather than a glass half full. And I think if the welcome when he gets there, if he goes, is not as good as he wanted it to be, that's going to have a knock-on effect.
Yeah.
You're right to point out there that it's not just the war in Iran, or who knows what's going to happen by April. It's also Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files. And we have to talk about the fact that Andrew is now at Sandringham. As we're filming, he's up at Sandringham, and the king is up at Sandringham. He's only 2 miles away. He's been there since Friday. I'm told he has no plans to go and see his brother. You're talking about visits. He's going to see Trump soon, and that's going to be a difficult diplomatic visit. Surely he should go and see his brother, or is that too dangerous for him to just pop round and see Andrew?
I find that very surprising. I mean, I'd be very surprised if he doesn't see him soon. I think they probably talk more than we think they do. I think probably he's talking to him, behind the scenes and saying, "Look, I'm sorry, I've had to do this, for the sake of the monarchy and for sake, and it's obviously difficult now that there's been an arrest and an ongoing police investigation. So there's very little that anyone can say about it publicly." You know, at the end of the day, he is his brother, you know, and I'm sure he feels for him to some extent. I mean, there have been suggestions that prior to Andrew's arrest, he thought things had gone a bit too far, and you know, maybe he shouldn't have been stripped of his titles, and Prince William was more the force behind all this. I think, you know, I don't think anyone's quite certain about that, but I would be very surprised if he doesn't talk to him at some point, and albeit just to explain to him that this is what he feels he has to do, you know, and public opinion is so against Andrew, quite understandably. And so, you know, his situation's not going to improve in the near future, and the investigation could go on for, a year, the police investigation, before we know what's going to happen on that front. So he's going to have to keep a low profile. He won't be able to do very much at all. He hasn't been doing very much for the last 3 or 4 years, of course. But I would be astonished if the King didn't talk to him at some point, and if he's up there, I would have thought it'd be easy to just go around and see him. But
Phil's astonished he hasn't gone round.
I totally disagree, I'm afraid, Phil. So I'm sorry to say. I think the story at the moment has not escalated in the last week since the arrest and sort of all the furore after that. I think if the King went to see him, somebody would take a shot. I mean, you guys are all over it like a rash.
That is true.
It would escalate the story, and it would bring it back to the surface again. So yes, I agree that the King is probably in communication on the telephone, but I think he's right not to go and see him, because I just think the story would suddenly resurface and escalate, and all the things that the palace don't want.
Does it matter if it's a story? I mean, we talk about with Trump, he's the head of, King's obviously the head of state, but he's also Andrew's brother. Does it really matter if there's a photograph of the King going around to see Andrew?
Because, again, it escalates the story. A story which, you know, we hope
they wouldn't be photographed together, would they? I mean, it would be quite easy for him to, you know, for Andrew to get in a car and be driven up to Sandringham Palace and no one to see them. I mean, that must be possible. But, even if he's lying on the back seat, to be fair. But as I say, we disagree on it. But I think, you know, I think at the end of the day he feels a little bit sorry for him. And even though he obviously, you know, warned years ago about the dangers of him being made trade envoy, and probably thinks, you know, I told you so, and should never have got to this state. But you know, at the end of the day, he's his brother, and I think, you know, I'd be surprised if he didn't see him. But you know,
I don't think it was anything to do with him.
But we wouldn't necessarily know if he had seen him, to be
fair. Yeah, I mean, as a former press secretary, in your job, you wouldn't want the King to be seen anywhere near Andrew. I think that's the point you're making.
Not at the moment. Yeah. And also, you know, we're talking earlier about a possible state visit to America. Yeah, do we want the Epstein story to continue and overshadow what could be a visit to the States next month?
He has had a couple of visitors. So he's had Canon Paul Williams, who is the King's personal chaplain. He's the Reverend of St Mary Magdalene Church, the church that, you know, our viewers will remember. You'll see on Christmas Day, you see the whole royal family going to the church at Sandringham. He's the guy that runs that church. The King, funnily enough, on Saturday, he went for a drive. He didn't go to Wood Farm, and I was told he's got no plans to see his brother, as we spoke about earlier. But on Saturday, Paul Williams visited Andrew. On Sunday, Charles was at church with the local reverend. Do you think there may have been, was that deliberate? They may have had some conversations or messages passed between the two or three?
Well, I'm sure he went round and offered. Andrew some, you know, some solace and comfort, some Christian forgiveness. I don't know, you know, but I mean, I'm sure he was there if he wanted to talk to him. But I thought more significant was the Lord Chamberlain popping around.
This is right. Yeah, this is Lord Richard Benyon.
Yeah, it has been interpreted in some quarters that he would be informing Andrew that moves are underfoot to remove him from the line of succession and what's likely to happen, because obviously that's quite a complicated process involving 14 other countries or whatever. So I think that's the more significant visit, to be honest. Very difficult for Andrew to go to church at the moment and be seen with the King, as you say. So yeah, I mean, I think that was highly significant that the Lord Chamberlain visited Andrew.
So this is Lord Richard Benyon. He's the Lord Chamberlain, the most senior member of the royal household.
He is
Am I right
indeed.
if I
Yes,
say that?
absolutely.
So how do you feel about this? If Phil's suggesting that he may, or there's been reports saying that, you know, it's possible, we don't know, we can speculate about why he went there, but he could have gone round and talked to him about taking him out the line of succession. Is that the kind of thing that the Lord Chamberlain would do, or going back to the earlier argument, is the kind of thing that the King should go and do?
Well, I think the Lord Chamberlain, yes, he is the most senior member of the royal household, but it's very much more of a ceremonial role than a policy or a political role. That's far more likely to be the principal private secretary, Sir Clive Alderton. So I would suspect the Lord Chamberlain was there not to talk about sort of policy or line of succession, but maybe just to check in.
Bit of a stepping stone, putting
to
some
see
sort
how,
of contact there.
Yes, yeah, to see how Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is, to see whether he needs anything, what's going through his mind. So I think, personally, I would suggest it's not really sort of talking about policy or succession. It's much more of a check-in.
Because he hasn't had many visitors, guys. He has a Waitrose delivery every Friday.
He's getting to know the Ocado tradesman very well, or something. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah.
I hope he gives his bags back.
It is a very, very, I'm not saying I feel sorry for him, he's brought it on himself, but it is a very, it's a Greek tragedy, isn't it? The way he's fallen from the young man who came back from the Falklands as a war hero. It's quite an extraordinary, I've been doing the Royals now 40 years and started with his wedding. And to see it go through like this, it's just absolutely unbelievable, really. You couldn't really make it up, but it's a very sad situation.
And not over.
Not over, no.
Not over.
By any means.
The lack of visitors, or the few visitors, as we mentioned, that come through, they don't include Beatrice and Eugenie. And I want to get your thoughts about the story over the weekend that suggested that both of them will be, or they have been, effectively banned from Royal Ascot, which, look, we go to Royal Ascot. I've seen you both there, actually, in a recent couple of years. It's a great event. It's called Royal Ascot because the royal family turn up the carriages, everyone cheers, everyone's happy to see them, they're cheering on the horses. Apparently, Beatrice and Eugenie won't be there this year.
No, well, things are changing quickly. I mean, when they were invited to Sandringham for Christmas, that seemed like the King and William were putting a sort of arm around them and saying, you're not to blame for what's happening. That now seems to be, just 3 months later, that now seems to be changing a lot. The knives seem to be out for them a bit, don't they? And they're coming under increasing speculation. They appeared several times in the Epstein files. People are starting to ask where they get their money from, even looking into Eugenie's anti-slavery charity. Some of the money there seems to be spent on expenses, like a lot of these charities, and doesn't end up in the right place. So they really are coming under the microscope now. So I can understand why the King, William, would probably want to distance themselves from them in public. Again, what they're saying to him privately might be a different matter, but some of these stories are speculative. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they do go to Ascot. I don't think that's been, I don't think anyone really knows, to be honest. And certainly there was one story around a couple of weeks ago that Eugenie had cut all ties with her father, and I don't believe that to be true at all. I mean, I think behind the scenes, both Bea and Eugenie have been talking to both their parents, and much as they're embarrassed by them, and much as they're obviously very, worried about them, I don't think either of them are the sort of people who just cut them off and not speak to them at all. So I don't think that story is true. So the Royal Ascot story, we'll just wait and see. I mean, there's nothing to stop them going privately, of course. Yes. They could just go. They might not be in the procession. They might not be at the lunch beforehand. They might not be in the royal box. But they might just meet up with friends, and go somewhere else in the royal enclosure. So I don't think you can ban them as such, but certainly the general thought that the royals will want to not be seen in public with them for some time is as Elsa says, trying to get the whole thing to die down a bit, and so that we can have a sort of period of calm for a while.
Yeah, and I think where are we in June? Yeah, I think it depends on if the story has gone away, or if there's a new revelation, then it's less likely that they will go to Ascot. I just think, we're only in March. I just think we need to see where we're going to be in June.
I mean, do you think if he's removed from the line of succession that they would be as well? Or do you think they'd go that far? Or
I think, as you said earlier,
you start to strip away massive layers, aren't you? I mean, personally, I'd remove Harry and Meghan, Harry and his children as well, but you're then down to sort of number 10 or 11, aren't you?
And also, I think it's a huge process to remove someone from the line of succession, as you said, because you've got to get the realms on board as well.
Yeah.
So the first step is Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, then to go to that next step and remove the girls, and what have they done? It's almost they're being tarnished by the sins of their parents. So, should they be, I suppose, is the question. I've met both princesses many, many times. They're lovely girls. I think they've got their feet firmly on the ground.
We keep calling them girls, don't we? But they're 37 and 35 and both got two, happily married mothers. But I mean, I think that was true a few months ago, that everyone thought they are the innocent victims. But now people are looking at it more closely. The fact that, they were 20 odd when they met Epstein, and whether or not they've had any, if there's more to come out, anything that comes out that shows they've had any financial gain from association with him, and I think they're toast as well.
Yeah. Only time will tell.
Yeah.
I'm still stuck by Phil's comment earlier that we're looking for a period of calm, which isn't going to happen, Phil.
You don't like periods of calm,
It's not going to.
You like to be busy.
It's not going to be calm. It carries on going. Interesting about you saying that you time with Beatrice and Eugenie. How do you think they're coping at the moment? Because you say we haven't seen them at any kind of major events or anything like that. They're obviously watching or experiencing in real time what's happening to their parents. We don't know where Sarah is. I mean, how do you think are the girls, are they ever going to come back? Are they ever going to, if they don't go to Ascot, are they ever going to be welcomed back to maybe a big public event? We've got Commonwealth Day ceremony on Monday. They're not on the list of royals to attend there.
Yeah. It's...
They've got this difficult balancing act, haven't they? Because, Beatrice is, 8th in line to the throne? Her children, she's a counsellor in line to the throne, then Eugene is, and she's a counsellor of state. And yet, they're not doing any royal duties as such, So it's a very, and I thought before all this blew up, there might be a case. We were talking about it earlier. Something, the older royals are sort of getting on, the Duke of Kent's and people like that, and they are getting thin on the ground with Harry and Meghan leaving and Andrew in disgrace. So that there might have been, the King and William might have wanted to use Bea and Eugenie a bit more, doing some royal jobs. But now I think that's out of the question. So it's very difficult. And as for Fergie, she used to call themselves the tripod, didn't she?
Yes.
Her and her daughters, they were so intertwined, but we haven't seen anything of her for, months. And she's supposed to have been in Ireland at a health farm, supposed to have been in the Alps skiing, supposed to have been in the Middle East. Speculation she might have gone on to Australia to see her sister. I don't think anyone knows where she is. Maybe Portugal. I don't know. But she can't run forever. No. She's got to come back one day and face the music in some way, shape or form. Reportedly hasn't got anywhere to live yet. So, when she comes back, that's going to be another circus.
Well, you're right. You talked about the three of them, but of course it was the four of them. They were the most happily divorced couple in the world. And I've got Christmas cards from the Yorks with a photograph, post-divorce of the four of them there. I don't quite know what to do with these cards now. I don't know whether if I sell them on eBay whether I'll get much. But they were still sort of a family unit, even though they'd gone through a divorce. And to have that unit totally and utterly crushed now.
Well, they made out they were a family unit, and I'm sure they did a lot for the children and possibly stayed together for many years for their sake. But once the children grew up, I think it was a strange kind of Faustian pact, really, that they stayed together. I mean, I don't think there was any romance involved in it. They both had other partners and other, as we know, certainly know with Andrew, but so even Sarah did as well. So it is a weird one. They are an odd couple in that sense, but I'm sure that for many years their first priority was bringing them up,
which is commendable, actually.
And as you say, they're much better than I do. They have ostensibly very nice people, but to be caught up in this is very, very difficult for them.
Well, I'll tell you who was at Royal Ascot last year. To remind you who was at Royal Ascot last year, it was Sarah Ferguson. And if memory serves me right, when all the carriages arrived, etc., I'm pretty sure we have a photograph of the King kissing Sarah Ferguson's hand.
And welcome up at Balmoral for holidays, up at Sandringham for Christmas up until the last couple of years.
Even
so she was very much
Kent's funeral.
Yeah, she was very much back in the fold and loving every minute of it. And now that's all changed.
Do you think that'll happen again?
No.
Let's talk about the Waleses in Wales. So I had an absolutely wonderful day last Thursday. Travelled up to central Wales. I was a little bit. It's a long way to go.
20-mile-an-hour speed limits.
It's a long way to go, honestly, genuinely. And people who live in Australia and America will probably laugh at me with the geography and stuff like that. But it is a long way to go for the job. But honestly, I was completely overwhelmed. If whelmed is a word, I was extra overwhelmed from what I saw. It was absolutely crazy and unbelievable. The scenes that happened there was we counted 7 walkabouts. At one stage, the car was driving through one of the towns, and lots of people had come out into the town to see them, but they couldn't get to the event. So William and Catherine, stopped the car, and they ran out and they did a walkabout. I genuinely was touched by what happened. You've obviously seen the footage and seen what's gone on. It was astonishing.
And it was pouring with rain as well, wasn't it? The weather was absolutely awful, and yet the crowd still came out. People keep talking about it's just a downfall of the monarchy with all the Andrew and Epstein stuff going on. Clearly, you saw it firsthand. It's not the downfall of the monarchy, is it? When you have crowds like that.
This is an interesting point because we talked about in the last couple of weeks about the royal family being in crisis. I actually think it was quite a brave move, Phil, for them to
It's all brave,
it could have
but
backfired.
in a funny sort of way. I mean, we all know that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is incredibly unpopular, as are Harry and Meghan in this country with most people. I know they've got their fans, but with most people. In a strange sort of way, I think it means that people are sort of rallying around the others, and they're becoming more popular by comparison, as opposed to bringing the whole monarchy down. I think people are saying, right, well, they're the bad apples, so to speak, and we're going to rally around and support the king and of course William and Kate. So William and Catherine. I know your viewers like us to call her Catherine. It's just shorthand for us, but it's they are incredibly popular, and nice to see they're very popular in Wales, where bears their name, and I gather she spoke a bit of Welsh.
She did in St David's Day.
Yeah.
Both of them did. Now, but what the thing that I found remarkable about this was the amount of hugs that Catherine was giving, high fives, selfies, etc. And if I go back to the Netflix documentary, Harry and Meghan's Netflix documentary, do you remember Meghan explained that she didn't think that Catherine was a hugger? Has something changed? What the amount of hugs that the Princess
I think
Catherine
she's changed a little bit since her illness. I think she's become more sort of reflective and more possibly more spiritual, and she said that herself, hasn't she?
Yeah.
And certainly going on quite a lot about being in tune with nature and nature's healing powers and things like that. So I think anyone gets changed by if you're sort of staring a serious illness in the face, you become much more sort of puts things in perspective. So maybe she has changed a little bit, but I mean this all stems back to Diana, really, doesn't it? I don't really follow them around as much as you do, Matt, but obviously I remember the days of Diana when people would be in tears, meeting her, they were just overwhelmed, and I don't know if people were crying when you turned up the other day.
Well, I remember there was only me for the mileage, but no, there was, I remember there was a 7-year-old girl and she was just screaming, "Princess, princess, princess," really loudly. And because they had so many people to speak to, then they eventually got to this girl. It was Leilani, I think her name was. And then she was just, she was completely crazy. And so I spoke to her afterwards. Why were you, like so happy? And she goes, because she's a princess. I wanted to meet Princess Catherine. If you indulge me, if I contrast that to Harry and Meghan in Jordan, which we need to talk about, which happened at the same time. There was an incident, I remember, where a little girl was introduced to Meghan and said, do you know Meghan? And the little girl just kind of walked away. And I'm going to float the idea that it is the difference in kind of popularity and the welcome they had in Jordan, the welcome of the Wales, because everyone knows that Catherine is a princess, but they only see Meghan as, a woman off a cookery TV show. Well,
it's slightly unfair to compare a girl in Wales to possibly a Palestinian refugee in Jordan who probably had no idea who they were, to be honest, to be fair. But I mean, I don't think that's a very fair comparison. But having said all that, I am getting the impression with these Harry and Meghan, quasi-royal trips that people are getting a bit bored by them. I mean, I think this is what, the 4th or 5th they've done, haven't they? Where have they been? Nigeria, Colombia, Jamaica, I think, a couple of others possibly. I mean, they're becoming like a sort of royal tribute band, aren't they? They sort of turn up and they kick a few footballs around like the Waleses do, and very smartly dressed and meet the kids and go on about mental health. It's all sort of fairly sort of similar stuff. But the fact is, it's just not authentic because they're not royals, not working royals anymore. So they're kind of just sort of going through the motions. But I mean, in terms of publicity, certainly in the UK, I don't know what it's like in the US or elsewhere, but I just think people are just getting a bit sort of turned off by it. I mean, if she makes a lot of money with her jam and her other sort of businesses, then as far as I'm concerned, that's great, get on with it. But sort of pretending that you're still semi-royal, exactly what the Queen didn't want, half in and half out, I just don't think it works, and I'm not saying they did anything wrong out there, but they didn't meet the Jordanian royal family, and if I think in Jamaica they were welcomed by the Prime Minister or whatever. So it varies from country to country. But if they're pleased to see them, great. But
I also want to know, what is the point? So Catherine and William were in Wales, the Prince and Princess of Wales, but it was coming up to St David's Day, and they were doing it because they are members of the royal family, and they're doing it out of service and duty. Why did Harry and Meghan go to Jordan? What was the point? Profile, dare I say it, to up their profile, to make them seem relevant, go going back to buy the jam. You know, I don't really know what is the point of doing something like that.
It wasn't made clear, was
I
it?
think they've got a big problem now. You know, certainly since some of their charities have gone pear-shaped. You know, certainly Centre Barley, for example, just imploding. You know, it's difficult to sort of present yourself as a serious, you know, charity campaigner or you know, somebody looking at various causes when that's happened, when that's all fallen apart. You know, so all they've really got is, you know, we are Harry, you know, we are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, you know, and it's wearing a bit thin.
Well, this goes back to my point, you know, like, to repeat myself from earlier, but everyone was excited to see Princess Catherine, but Meghan is now, you know, she's not really Duchess of Sussex, doesn't do anything royal, so she is just someone who appears on a Netflix TV show. That's my argument.
But she does like being known as Duchess of Sussex.
She does always,
always being.
You know, I'm Meghan Sussex now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they were, just for balance, they were invited. Went there to Jordan on the invitation of Director General of the World Health Organization, and Harry did speak about aid, the demand for aid to be sent to Gaza. It feels.
Well, I read somewhere they'd given $500,000 to the World Health Organization. Is that true? So that's Harry and Meghan had done that. So you know they're also making some money. Or they're where did that come from? $500,000.
Yeah. Well, then.
If it's true.
If it's true.
Well, they've restructured, haven't they, recently as well? They restructured all their operations. But it just felt a little bit kind of out of date. It didn't, you know, as I say, we talk about, I don't really understand the point of it. It just felt a little bit kind of contrasting it to the trip to Wales.
I thought it was a bit needy.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't been in the limelight for a little while.
Yes,
you know, let's
bit,
go and do a visit.
It looks a bit like that.
And it's interesting that they didn't post on Instagram. So you know how they love to post everything on Instagram, but there was nothing about this trip that they posted online. Almost like they were embarrassed about it in many ways. I don't know.
I think it was what it was. I don't think it's, you know, if they wanted to have them there and they invited them and people there were pleased to see them, that's absolutely fine. But it's to me, it's getting a bit tedious.
Tedious. All right, Phil. Okay, it's getting a bit tedious. We're going to move on.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to the quickfire questions. Hopefully it's not tedious.
Yes.
Right.
Elsa first, because she's got the best answers.
Elsa first.
No pressure there, Phil.
Quickfire questions. Elsa, with Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor banned from horse riding, what new hobby should he take up?
Well, I think he should take up the card game of solitaire because he can play it on his own.
Oh, very good. Very good.
And he can win.
And he can win.
I don't know, tiddlywinks or something. I mean, surprisingly, I haven't actually seen any pictures of him on a golf course for a couple of years. There isn't a course at Sandringham. There was one at Windsor, of course. I don't think there is one at Sandringham.
There isn't.
But obviously, there's quite a few clubs. There's one at Kings Lynn. There's one at Hunstanton. I think there's one at RAF Marham down the road, I think. So, you know, I'm surprised, but whether they'll let him in or not is a different matter. But
Haven't they changed
I would have thought
the name?
he's got quite a lot of time on his hands. He's not riding. He's you know, he's not allowed to do this. He's not allowed to do that. He's not, you know, taking his computers away, or whatever. So
And his shotguns.
and his guns, yeah. So, or he can only use his guns with someone else's there apparently. So I don't know. I think he better go back on the golf course. His handicap could be great.
I've got an idea. Because he is also the spare, why doesn't he write a memoir?
Oh, please no.
Right, next quickfire question. After Meghan was seen playing football, which royal would you trust to take a high-pressure World Cup final penalty?
Well, it's got to be Mike Tyndall, isn't it?
I was going to say Mike Tyndall.
no,
Yeah,
but-
absolutely.
But I have
It's
to
a
say that
wrong-shaped ball, though, Phil.
yeah, he'd probably boot it over the bar, wouldn't he? But William's quite a good footballer, I think. Actually, I mean, every time he does these photo shoots where he's doing penalties or whatever, he seems to sort of slot them home. So I think he would be quite a good penalty.
Oh, what about Prince George? We don't know what his sort of prowess on the football field is. He might be really good.
I mean, and Charlotte, I think,
Yeah.
plays a bit as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to put forward the Princess of Wales because it's the pressure, and she never seems to appear like that she is stressed or under pressure. She seems so calm. I remember I think she once said to a bunch of journalists in a room, actually, that, you know, she's like a swan where, you know, the feet are underneath the water, they're kind of panicking, but she keeps like a serene kind of thing. And I think she would be able to cope with the pressure of a penalty kick.
And she's very sporty.
She's very sporty. Final question. Who from the royal or celebrity world should replace Beatrice and Eugenie at Royal Ascot?
I think it'd be you and I. I think Phil and I. I've got the outfit. I've got the hat.
Yeah.
Have you got the morning suit?
I've thrown it away. I think it doesn't fit me anymore. But
I know. I think Phil and I. We'll take.
what about the Beckhams? You know, now that they've been elevated, and finally given their his knighthood that he's been after for so many years. I think they look very elegant in the carriages, wouldn't they? And,
Have to cover up his
he
tattoos.
he seems to get on very well with the king, doesn't he? You know, they got this mutual interest in beekeeping and gardening and cookery and one thing. So he actually seems to be very fond of him.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be at all surprised if they get an invite. That'd be great.
That's a great shout. But if you guys do get an invite in the carriage, can you try and find room for me?
What do you reckon? Is it worth it?
He looks very good in a top hat, actually.
I haven't seen him. Are you good for a winner, though? Are you good at betting?
Oh no, I'm dreadful.
Oh, mad.
I go for the ones that are like the name.
3 legs.
All right, well, thanks, guys. We've been through a lot. I really appreciate everything that you said, and I've enjoyed myself, so thank you. Right, that's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive. Thanks to my guests, Phil and Elsa, and thank you for watching. Please leave your comments below as usual, and remember to subscribe to us here on our new Royal Exclusive YouTube channel for the latest royal news. We'll see you next week.